Alright, check this out. Here we have a 15-inch HP OMEN with a 6-core i7, the RTX 2070 Super Max-Q, and an OLED Ultra HD display. This video will demonstrate performance expectations for Cyberpunk 2077 at full HD resolution across 4 different scenarios, and will throw a 125-watt 3070 in the mix to enhance this comparison. Starting with these base in-game settings for this comparison, we'll start with ray tracing on and DLSS off. Now, this is not an ideal frame rate experience on PC with either of these GPU options. As expected, we have strong GPU utilization for both systems here. Thermal performance on the OMEN is solid, but it only has to deal with an 80-watt GPU in these tests. That's easy for any decent gaming laptop to cope with. Moving on to ray tracing on and DLSS at balanced, the 80-watt 2070 Super offering frame rates in the mid-40s may not be ideal to some. However, the 125-watt 3070 is offering a more ideal 60 FPS experience. Take note of the higher CPU wattage on both systems using DLSS here. When you are essentially reducing the base Full HD resolution and then upscaling it, that further stresses the CPU. On the OMEN, that increases the heat, and on the Mech G3, we're holding pretty steadily near its 95-degree thermal throttle set point. Moving on with these base settings, but this time without ray tracing or DLSS, the OMEN's 80-watt 2070 Super isn't quite enough for that 60 FPS experience, but to some, this might be fine. Meanwhile, the 125-watt 3070 is delivering a 60 FPS experience with a little headroom. The CPU wattage is slightly lower here than RT on and balanced DLSS. Now let's take this OMEN's 80-watt 2070 without ray tracing, but use balanced DLSS. This is where you'll see high performance at the expense of heat as the CPU is pushed to its maximum. The GPU is finally moving beyond 60 degrees Celsius as the CPU inches towards 90 degrees Celsius. Those interested in DLSS should be aware that it can lead to higher CPU stress and its image is not quite as crisp as the native resolution. Those that can notice higher native resolutions on laptops beyond 1080p will likely notice DLSS even easier.